Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's session, I'm going to talk about two writers who lived in the 14th century, John Wycliffe and John Gower. Before getting into the session, do subscribe my YouTube channel and get the updates about the upcoming lectures. Okay, let us talk about John Wycliffe first. John Wycliffe was an popular figure in the religious culture of 14th century in England, and his works were very popular and influential for hundreds of years. In a later age, he was called the morning star of the Reformations. Of course, he was also called as the father of Reformations by the Protestant historians. See why? Because his ideas were have laid the foundations of the religious reform which took place in England in the 1530s. See, Wycliffe was born at some point in the around 1320s, probably in the village of Wycliffe in the North Riding of Yorkshire. He went to Oxford around 1350. There he was appointed as a priest in 1351. He seems to have spent most of the days in 1360s in Oxford because in 1361 he was selected as the head of Balliol College. Wycliffe devoted his life to academic writing on the theological topics. But he was, briefly an envoy of the crown in 1374 when he was sent to Bruges to negotiate clerical taxes. In the same year, he has made a rector of Lutherworth of Leicestershire. See, of course, he was said to be a religious reformer, and he had seen serious failings in the church. He criticized churches were in England. He was concerned about what he saw the corruption in the church hierarchy. A lot of hierarchies occurred in churches in England, and difficulty that ordinary people had in reading the scriptures. In Wycliffe's day, the Bible was written in Latin. Therefore, it was very difficult for the common people to understand the Bible. So it is impossible for the people who were not educated to understand, because in those days in England, Latin and French were medium of communication for the upper class people and educated people. Poor people used only English language. So these works were translated by Wycliffe into English. So Wycliffe had some radical ideas about Eucharist, the wine and bread that is symbolically consumed in Christian church services. He argued that this bread and wine did not actually turn into the body of Christ in the ceremony, a view that put him at odds with the conventional teaching of the church. As a heretic, he was lucky enough not to be burned in his lifetime. Throughout his life, he was protected by powerful friends. He was repeatedly summoned to appear before the royal and church officials. In 1376, he was called for the king's council, but riot broke out and the meeting was abandoned. Around 1377, Pope Gregory XI, who issued 5 bulls, 5 orders condemning Wycliffe's views. These decrees, these ordinances did not arrive in England until Christmas in 1377, whereupon Wycliffe was arrested. He was subsequently released and then summoned to the meeting with Archbishop Sudbury and Bishop Courtney. In the spring of 1378, Wycliffe appeared before the authorities in Lambeth, but the investigation was interrupted by Sir Lewis Clifford, who was sent by John of Kent, the mother of the king. Despite this royal protection, in May 1382, Wycliffe was condemned at the Blackfriars Council. In June of the previous year, there had been a rebellion in England known as the Peasant Revolt. A group of rebels had marched on London, where they burnt buildings including Savoy Palace, the palace of John of Gaunt, Gaunt. There they murdered anyone they encountered who was thought to be associated with the government. But it's unclear the influence of Wycliffe's, which worked on the rebels, but his ideas became associated with them. In the later years, Wycliffe retreated into obscurity, spending the rest of his days in Lutterworth. He died in 1384, but his ideas lived on for much longer. Wycliffe's followers were called Lollards. The word Lollard came from Middle Dutch Lollard, Lollaerd, which means mumbler, mutterer. So the word was originally associated with the particular Christian fraternities who were thought to be excessively and falsely pious. In the spring of 1428, a group of churchmen dug up the bones of Wycliffe and burned them. This grisly enterprise was carried out at the instructions of Pope Martin V. 13 years earlier, in 1415, Wycliffe had been condemned as a heretic at an ecclesiastical council called the Council of Constance. There was a person called John Hus, was a theologian who had been influenced by the writings of Wycliffe, had been burnt at the stake. Like Hus, the church persecuted those who followed or were influenced by Wycliffe, regarding them as heretics. Wycliffe believed in the Bible but not the church, which was the supreme source of religious authority. Against church tradition, he had the Bible translated from Latin into English so that common people could read it. The people accused Wycliffe of heresy or opinions that contradict church doctrine. See, he took around from 1382 till 1395 he spent to translate the Bible from Latin to English in order to make the common people to understand the message from Bible. Well, that's it about John Wycliffe. Let me move on to the next writer, John Gower. See, John Gower, he was said to be a very good friend of Chaucer, poet. Was born around 1330 into a prominent family who lived in Yorkshire, where they held properties in Kent, Yorkshire. They got a huge properties, Yorkshire, Norfolk and Suffolk. These places they've got assets. Gower's coat of arms is identical to those of Sir Robert Gower of Brabant. So there is no much information about his education, what is his qualification, but it has been speculated that he was trained in law. He was very good in law. Gower himself held properties in Suffolk and Kent, where he seems to have resided until taking up residence in the Priory of St. Mary Overies in Southwark, London, around 1377. His first work was Mirror di L'Homme. In English, it's Mirror of Man, okay, which was written around 1376 till 79. It's an allegorical poetry, was written in French, okay, meditating on the fall of man and the effect of the sin on the world. Gower later Latinized the title alone it's Speculum Hominis. Speculum, Speculum Hominis, and later changed it to Speculum Meditantis, Speculum, Speculum Meditantis, Meditantis, in order to fit with the title of his later works. Around 1377, Gower started to work on Vox Clamantis, Voxclamantis, Clamantis, the clamoring voice in English, the clamoring, Clamorang, clamoring voice. It's an essay was written in Latin elegiac verse, like Speculum Meditantis. It is also treats of the sinfulness and criticizes the corruption of the society. Again, it also provides a contemporary view of these peasants' revolt of 1381. Gower's moral and philosophical writings were highly praised by his peers, so he was also called Moral Gower. In 1385, Gower's good friend Geoffrey Chaucer, who dedicated his work Troilus and Cresside, giving him the epithet Moral Gower. So Chaucer is the one who gave him the epithet as a Moral Gower. In 1386, Gower started work on his most popular work, Confesse Amantis, which means in English, Lover's Confession. Unlike his previous work, Gower wrote this Confessia in English at the request of Richard II. Richard II II was concerned about the English language is getting diminished. Nobody is giving interest to write in English. So Richard II, who requested John Gower to write in English, so that's why he wrote it in English. It is a collection of tales and exemplar treating of courtly love. The framework is that of a lover complaining first to Venus and later in the work confessing to her priest Genius. It was completed around 1390. Confessio Amantis made an important contribution to the courtly love literature in English. Some of the stories have their counterparts in Chaucer's tales, and one of the stories later served as the source for Shakespeare's Pericles, in which Shakespeare had Gower appear in chorus. Gower revised Confessio Amantis in 1393, replacing the praise of King Richard II with a dedication to Henry of Lancaster. In return, Henry presented Gower with an ornamented collar. So the next, Gower composed a series of Latin poems as well as treaty, a sequence of French ballads in rhyme royal. In 1397, Gower got married Agnes Groundolf, Agnesgroundolf, Groundolf, which probably his second wife. By this time, Gower was nearly blind, so the marriage may have been one of his convenience. He got married. King Richard II was finally deposed by Parliament in 1399 and replaced by Henry Lancaster as Henry IV. Soon after that, Gower composed a sequel to Vox Clementis, the Chronica Tripartita, Cronica Chronica Tripartita, Tripartita, which means tripartite chronicle, in which he condemned the vices of King Richard II and his court. At this time, Gower also wrote Latin verses in order to praise the new king, as well as his last English work, the To King Henry in Praise of Peace. In 1400, Gower dedicated and presented his French work Cinquante Ballads, Cinkante, Cinquante Ballads, which means in English 50 ballads, which attributed to his younger days to King Henry. Old and blind John Gower, who passed away in 1408, leaving his considerable estate. He was buried in St. Mary Overies. Later the place was called as St. Saviour's. So now it is called as a Southwark Cathedral, where his tomb can still be seen today. Well, that's it about today's session. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe my YouTube channel.